Hello, my kako. Welcome to a new episode of What's Kuyuan, where we start every conversation with this question because, well, that's how we connect here in Hawaii. I'm Ron Mizutani, and today we're talking about one of Hawaii's iconic food destinations, Hamura Saimin on the island of Kauai. Charles and Aiko Hamura opened the Tiny Hole in the Wall restaurant in 1952, and they've packed the crowds ever since. In fact, if you were to ask 100 Kauai residents for a list of where to eat on Kauai, I guarantee you every single one of them will include Hamura Saimin. I want to welcome my dear friend Olena Hugh to the conversation. Olena is an award-winning journalist, a television personality, entrepreneur, marketing and communications executive, and a former Miss Kauai and Miss Hawaii. Welcome, my friend.
Hello.
So good to see you.
Great to see you too.
Thank you for being here. Before we get started, what school you in?
I'm a graduate of Kapa'a High School. And a lot of people actually ask me when I graduated from Kamehameha.
Because they are the warriors.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when I tell them Kapa'a, they usually tilt their head a little bit to the side and go, Kauai?
So, when Lanai was here, I asked him to sing his alma mater. And he said, I forget. You still remember yours?
Yep.
Give me a line.
Well, everybody knows, like, kind of, I guess, the chorusy part. But I'll start off with, hail, 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 the Kapa'a High. And then, the woodlands shall echo, they shall ring as always. The tops of the peak shall echo, mau, mau. And then they repeat, and yeah.
Kapa'a.
It's ingrained in there.
My favorite memory of Kapa'a was it Honeymoon in Vegas? Nicolas Cage. And so he was at the telephone booth in Kapa'a.
Yep.
And he was talking to, I forget who. Maybe it was
James Caan.
James Caan. I was going to say the son's name, Scott. And he said, now, is it Kapa'a or is it Kapa'a? And so I did this special when I was at KHON on movies on Kauai. And we intertwined movie clips with whatever we were doing, and we had Nicolas Cage on one phone, and then I was on the other phone, and I found that phone because there was really a payphone in that area.
So cool.
And we were going back and forth, and it was fun. But yeah, Kapa'a or is it Kapa'a? So lifer in Kapa'a.
Well, I'm from Kilauea.
That's right.
So North Shore, and I went to Kilauea Elementary and then went to Kapa'a Intermediate, and then Kapa'a High School.
Okay, my mom is Kilauea.
Oh.
Yeah, she was a Kilauea girl.
Oh, I love your
Yeah.
mom. She's so sweet.
Well, she loves you too. So let's get to Hamura.
Yep.
It's the old Crest Lane, Crest
Street.
Crest Street. If you go all the way down, you see that Army barracks, or it used to be, the Blue House, if you will, and you're there. And boy, no matter where you're from, Oahu, Kauai, Hanapepe, Kilauea, you know where Hamura's is.
Well, because
Why?
it was the only place that was open late, right? So you would go to like a concert or a football game, and then there was nothing else open. And then you have those comfort foods that are super salty and delicious.
What do you think? When they first opened in 1952, and they from what I understand, they still have the same recipe when it comes to the broth, and I know they make their own noodles. Who would have thought this thing would still be going strong? And it's every online review and social media they pitch it so visitors arrive there too.
Yeah, it's interesting though because it's not gourmet by any means, but I think it just has that comforting combination. And it's so local. I've actually had a lot of people when I visit Kauai tell me that they want the chiffon pie.
Right.
So I think that's kind of emerged as like the latest thing to bring back because, obviously everything else isn't as easily transportable, but just, yeah.
That's the daughter created that, the lilikoi chiffon pie. And from what I understand, they sell like 50, 75 a day.
I believe it.
Yeah. And everybody kind of goes there for that too.
What's your favorite dishes?
I go there for the wonton min, and then gotta have at least one barbecue stick. How about you?
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Or even if it's just like plain like Simon, and then you gotta get at least the chicken or the beef stick to gnaw on.
Right. And their menu is very simple. I mean, they have You can have your kamaboko, you can have your side,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or you can have fried noodles if you want it, you know, fried. Um, I just have such fond memories of Hamura, and it's pretty much communal seating. I mean, you sit there with strangers. Most time you know somebody in there, but it's never lost that ambiance and localness.
And I think rain or shine too. Like I think more in particular when the weather is bad. You know, you wanted the hot Saimin, but it's just so iconic and especially after doing something, you know, you just want something to satiate whatever your hunger cravings are. And another place that I also like is Oki Diner.
Oki Diner.
And I was thinking that was like
they
the
st-
major competition.
Are they still?
I don't know, because didn't they move? They were
They
kind
did
of
move. They were by
closer.
McDonald's
Yep.
in Lihui.
And then they were at where Egbert's used to be or something.
Right. Gosh, you just sent me back in time because that's another late night, you know, after Club Jetties and what was the old one? Vanishing Point. All the discos we used to go to.
Ooh.
You remember any of those names?
Well, they didn't have any when I was growing up.
Gilligan's
No.
Not even
Was
Gilligan's.
Gilligan's at the hotel?
at the hotel.
Okay.
Okay.
They tried to have stuff at Lihui Lanes
Uh-huh.
when I was growing up.
At the bowling alley.
Yes, for us kids.
Oh my gosh.
But you can't beat the bonfires at the beach, right?
Right. And those are legal, by the way, on Kauai.
Correct.
Although I know a few brothers who they take their 4-wheel drives at Lidgate Park and they can tear up the sand. That's illegal.
I feel like, you know, obviously everybody loves Kauai. They always say the beauty of it. But I think for us being from there, you do have a different energy, a different type of presence when you meet people.
Yeah.
And so I try to carry that with me every day.
So I recently went home at Kauai, and I was doing a function over by, I keep thinking of the bar over there, but there was an event for Christmas. But I went back to Hamura because I parked right there.
Nice.
And you know, I said, you know what, I gotta eat Simon. And I know that a lot of my friends and family still go there as often as they can, and there's just something very special about Simon. But with Hamura, it's a part of Kauai and the fabric of the island. You know, the original stools, from what I understand, are still there.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, and now of course they've expanded a little bit, but you know they can now seat about 35 people. But it's still that same, you know, home feeling.
Well, I think, you know, when it comes to food, what's the number one thing you want? Consistency, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to know when you go, it's going to be the same flavors and the same textures and the same combinations that it always is. And so if you can produce something that's consistently the same in that context, then I think you have a recipe for success. And obviously because the menu is so small, you know, it's simple and cost effective for them.
Yeah,
And
it's cheap,
you know what to expect.
inexpensive. I don't want to say cheap, but yeah, even foodies love it, and it's nothing fancy. It's just, you know, just a bowl of Simon, and you can put on your green onions and your roast pork, and if you want wontons on the side. Yeah, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But you know, people come from far away, and visitors to tourists, Japanese tourists, they're all in there.
What I love too about the meat sticks is that char. Like even when my father-in-law makes ribs, I love to eat like the burnt ones. And I know like it's probably not the best for you, but every once in a while,
It's okay.
right?
Moderation.
Yes.
In moderation. You know, the sad thing about businesses, and really during COVID, is we saw some of our best places to dine close their doors. And sadly, many of them will never reopen again. I just learned a couple of years ago, in fact, before COVID, that Ono Charburger in Anahola
Yes.
is gone.
Yep. I remember hearing about that.
I did not know that. And I sent somebody there. One of my son's friends was visiting Kauai. He's like, oh, where do we eat? I said, oh, go to this place called Ono Charburger. Ask for Dwayne. What was his name? Dwayne?
Yep, Dwayne.
Yep, Dwayne.
Dwayne's
And
Old Burger.
and go enjoy that burger. And it was nowhere to be found.
Yeah, so in 2018, my mom passed away, and then I was there for a good like year. She was a little bit of a pack rat, so we had to like clean out the house and then renovate. And Home Depot is in Lihue.
I know, right?
So, there was a lot of driving back and forth, but my husband's a carpenter, and so I had turned him on to Dwayne's, or I guess I just turned into Ono Charburger.
Ono Charburger, yeah.
But oh man, it was our favorite. And I don't know if you know, but they have a milkshake that is very unique.
Peanut butter. No.
Boysenberry.
Boysenberry. I thought you were going to
Or some. Yeah, I think it was boysenberry.
Boysenberry.
Yeah,
yeah,
and so
you're right.
but he also loved their onion rings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like almost every week we were stopping at Ono Charburger and getting a burger and onion rings and a shake and just
Yeah,
And
and
then
you would, you know what? You would wait like 45 minutes for the burger to come, but it was so worth it.
Yes.
It was that good. And
Absolutely
I was absolutely stunned to learn that he was no longer open.
I think they closed maybe the next year, and it was
Yeah.
kind of sudden.
Yeah.
Because we were still kind of going back and forth selling the house, and then it was like the next thing you know, like it's the last week to get your burgers, and it was like, what? They're closing? No way! And so I think Daniel went, and yeah, so sad.
What a sad day. And he had all his chickens running over there. And Kauai is one of those places. There's chickens everywhere, and they greet you at Lihue Airport, right?
Yep.
I mean, they literally are walking around the airport parking lot. But he had his chickens at his burger place, and they were the friendliest birds ever. Kauai has changed, though. Kauai really has changed, hasn't it?
It's definitely grown
Yeah.
and evolved. It was interesting though, because I was kind of there when Kapa'a turned into kind of like a Haleiwa,
Right.
And then there was all that traffic and all these different shops, and I think everyone was making tacos.
Right.
I was like, why is everyone making tacos?
There's like 8 Mexican restaurants
Yeah.
in Kapa'a now.
Oh, and then Bubba Burgers
Uh-huh.
is there too.
Back in the day, Kapa'a was when we were young, because we used to go to help me out.
Country Kitchen,
No, not Kunioka's.
Otsuka's.
Otsuka's. No.
It's a furniture store.
The green. Yeah, Otsuka's. My sister used to work at Otsuka's. The green family store. Oh my gosh! Shame on me.
What do they serve or sell?
Oh my gosh, my Kauai family is going to be so mad at me. But it was a very simple, slow town. And, we'd jump off the bridge right there, right before the Kapa'a school and, the park across the street. And now it's like there's a bead shop everywhere and there's food, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, like you said, traffic is just crazy.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
Although the poke place, my classmate's gonna kill me. Poke Express, Fish
Yeah.
Express.
That's in Lihue, though, I think. Is it?
There's one in Kapa'a too, next to Wailua Shave Ice.
We're advancing in age. I'll just say that. But my visions of Kapa'a has changed. And I want to invite you to talk about this in a future show. But the visual that I have of Kapa'a will always be seeing the telephone poles all on their sides after Iniki, and that image of every single telephone pole down.
Yep.
Yeah, and my father, rest in peace. He passed away too a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago rather. He was there working at Hawaiian Tel at the time, and night to day they were just trying to put up the utility posts.
Yeah. It was crazy because the whole area was just littered with roofs and pieces of buildings, and
It breaks my heart to think about it. Let's talk about that in a future show. But coming back to Hamura's, the old Crest store, there was actually a Crest store. That's why they called it Crest Street.
Oh,
You remember that? No.
no,
You remember Uneji's
no.
next door? Oh my gosh. Well,
I remember Barbecue Inn,
Barbecue Inn was
With
much,
all the-
much later. Dairy
Okay.
Queen.
small kind. Remember Dairy Queen.
Okay, that was right across the street. Yeah, that whole area has evolved too.
Oh,
In fact, that was the only traffic light in Lihue for many years.
wow.
At Uneji's in the corner there, right before
What was
the firehouse.
Uneji's?
It was like the place where we went to go buy food and goodies. It was like a little mom and pop family store. And I still think they have the logo or the family name on this building. I think it's a bank now or something.
Oh, okay.
Hamura's still lasted
That is
after all these years, since 1952. iconic. And I hope it never goes away.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually with those kind of mom and pop shops, it all relies on the children, right?
Right.
Whether or not they want to put in the work.
And
so
it is
that's-
hard work.
Yes.
Yeah. But
'Cause
so
you're
far,
very
their
excited.
daughter has grabbed the reins and knows this is maybe she feels her responsibility to carry on mom and dad's legacy. Yeah.
Well, hopefully her kids will keep it going too.
Yes, or somebody, because Hamura needs to be here for a long time so that the next generation can enjoy.
How would you feel if it kind of became like a franchise?
I don't know if I'd like that.
Yeah.
I think I like the fact that it's in that same, little building, the stools. You got to wait in line. You sit next to people you don't even know, and it's okay. And the food is so good. I don't know if I'd like it to franchise out like that. That's part of the beauty of being on Kauai too.
I bet they've been approached.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I could see it kind of being like a Zippy's because it has the name recognition and the simple menu and probably would be quite profitable.
Yeah, I'm sure they make a good money. But again, it's inexpensive, and it's you can go in there with $10 and walk out full. And I'm hungry. All right, Olena, thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate it, and I hope you can come back and we can talk a little bit more about beautiful Kauai. There's an island. Anyway, thank you. Take care. Mahalo nui for joining us. Tune in next week for another episode of What School You Went. Until next time, mahui ho.
What School You Went is a PBS Hawaii production. Music by Taimane Gardner. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and tell your friends. You can find us on pbshawaii.org and everywhere you get your podcasts.